Thanks a lot for your very warm welcome, dear Mr. Holzner as the Executive Director, dear Mr. Sterer as the Scientific Director, dear Hannes Swoboda, here he is, President, and Governor Holzmann, I have not seen yet, but I extend my warm welcome to him as well. Thank you for the invitation to celebrate with you the 50th anniversary of the Vienna Institute for International Economic Studies. As was already mentioned, I will not be able to stay. It's a sign of the times, I would say, because without a doubt we live in challenging times. And for some of you it might seem a bit awkward that I'm starting this speech now by saying I come to celebrate. But after the pandemic, I think we've seen and we feel and we are all aware of how important it is, and that we appreciate it even more than if we can come together, if we can discuss together, if we can argue together, if we can make plans and develop our visions and pathways to the future together, and yes, also to come together and celebrate a bit an occasion as a 50th anniversary of an institution that has become so important for Austria and for a whole region. So let's also take that moment to appreciate that and to say thank you for all the work. It was in 1972, and I think you probably heard that date already today in the welcome addresses, that the Vienna Institute for Internationale Wirtschaftsvergleiche, the WIIW, as I learned you'd say in English, was founded. Soon it became an important economic research institute with a focus on the Comecon. I had to smile when I thought about this word in this speech, because it's been a long time that I used the word Comecon. Because obviously that was a different time, with a different economic surrounding, with the different economic system in our neighborhood. The Comecon is an organization that we've almost forgotten about today. And we've thought that 1989, or there was big talk about 1989 being the end of history. We all remember the big phrase of Francis Fukuyama about 99 being a 89 obviously being a Zeitenwende, that our way of living, our system of democracy, our liberal market economy has prevailed. But looking back at this assumption now and seeing where we are today, we need to concede that history continued after 1989. And also the Institute continued, with a focus on the region, on Central Eastern and Southeastern Europe. And it really became an important, not only a large research institution in Austria and one of the leading economic think tanks in Europe, with economic research on 23 countries, but it also became an institution with research needed now more than ever before. Because again, after 89, and some of you might question if it's an adequate comparison, but we are again at a point of a Zeitenwende, a turning point in European history. The Russian invasion of Ukraine is a turning point again in European history. We don't know yet, and I guess this will also be the topic of the panel debate to some extent afterwards, what the next chapters will be in the history book. But I think the aggression of Russia in Ukraine, and we have the ambassador of Ukraine here with us today, demonstrates one big difference between Russia and the idea of European integration and the reality of European integration. So I think for all of us it's clear the Russian aggression must not prevail. On the contrary, this must lead to a resurgence of Europe. The European idea must come out of this even stronger, because Europe's strength is cooperation and is solidarity. And Russia's war is the opposite of that. It's destruction and conflict. And we must not let Vladimir Putin bring this conflict, this destruction, this separation to Europe, but the idea of Europe and the reality of Europe must come out stronger of this situation than it has been in the last years. And I think this is possible. No doubt, the challenges are huge, and we will come back to that. But it's also the only feasible and the only necessary way to react to this situation. The Russian army has destroyed cities, has killed innocent people who just wanted to have a good life. I was at the Polish-Ukrainian border not so long ago. You see there are people fleeing the aggression who just wanted to have a good life in Ukraine and just wanted to live their pension in peace and quiet. We have people finding shelter in Austria and many other countries, in other European countries, but in addition to the tragedies that these, or not in addition, but because of also these tragedies that this war causes and that we've witnessed, there is a conclusion we need to draw from that. And the conclusion that we need to draw from that is that we need to become independent of Russian energy supplies, of the dependence we see at the moment that makes us vulnerable, that makes us an easy, well, not easy, but will, where we can be blackmailed, where we can be, where we are in a situation that, that makes it hard or harder for us to react. But that must be the conclusion. The conclusion must be independence of Russian energy supplies. And while we know, and I'm the first one to concede that, this is much easier said than done. We live in a country where gas infrastructure has been built towards the east for decades. It's much easier said than done. But the alternative, what would the alternative be to refounding our energy supply on independent footing? What would the alternative be? The alternative would be to be quiet to the pictures of Bucha. And for me, this is not an alternative. And the good thing is we can act, we have opportunities to act, and we also need to act in this way in order to have an appropriate answer to this aggression and to give an appropriate answer to Vladimir Putin. When I recently discussed this question with Fatih Birol, who's the head of the International Energy Agency, we discussed the plan that we developed in the ministry on what could be the Austrian pathway to a phase out of our dependency on Russian gas mainly. And for the international guests here, in Austria the number by now is very commonly known. For the international guests, Austria has for the last years around 80% of our national gas consumption is fueled by Russian gas. When I recently discussed this situation and our plan to get out of this Russian dependence with Fatih Birol, he left me with two core messages. The one was, yes, indeed, Austria is indeed in a difficult situation. It has been a transport hub for Russian gas for a long time. The infrastructure has been built this way. We are a landlocked country, so no room for a big floating LNG terminal on Neusiedler See, or you pick your lake in Austria. And this is the result of 30 years of energy policy that took us the wrong way. So yes, indeed, that was his number one message. Austria is indeed in a difficult situation. But then he also had a positive message. Because he was very clear also that the situation that we're in here now, and he said it was, again, a global energy crisis, not just an Austrian problem, a European problem, but a global energy crisis. The situation is also markedly different from the energy crisis in the 1970s. We do have competitive technologies that capture the energy from sun, from wind, from water, from biomass, because renewable energy today is competitive. It has a level playing field. That's why it's also a rational interest to invest in renewable energy capacity. And this is exactly what we are doing in Austria and what we are continuing to do in Austria. With the Renewable Energy Deployment Act, we set the legal framework for 100% renewable electricity until 2030. We work on a renewable heating law that will not only ban new gas installations in Austria from next year, but also have a plan for phasing out fossil boilers from heating, because we do have better alternatives than burning gas in our houses at a couple of thousand degrees in order to heat a living room to 20 degrees. There's district heating, there's renewable electricity, there's heat pumps cheaper and better and no regret alternatives. We will reduce energy consumption, be more efficient from industrial processes, in services, in mobility, in buildings. We will strengthen electricity grids, increase flexibility in the electricity system. And of course, we will also need to diversify our routes, our gas suppliers, because we know also that from a green minister, we know we will still need fossil fuel and fossil gas for some time to come. So these are concrete alternatives, concrete pathways for making us more independent. Reduce gas consumption, increase renewables deployment, and diversify suppliers and routes. Because getting off fossil fuels, it has always been a no-brainer for everybody who's working on climate action. That's the number one thing to do, is make the switch from fossil fuels to a renewable-based system. But this moment of history also shows us very clearly that this energy transition is not only a matter of climate action, yes, has always been. It's not only a matter of better quality of life because of renewables not having destructive effects on the environment. It's not only a question of competitiveness for our industry and for our economy because renewables will stabilize at a lower level energy prices. It's simply also a matter of security. It's a matter of geopolitics. It's a matter of national sovereignty that this energy transition has become, and this is exactly what we need to work on and why we need to push and work on this, not just nationally, but also in Europe. And Europe, and why I started by saying that Europe must come out of this situation stronger, and why I'm confident that this will also work is because European cooperation pays off, and it pays off especially in times of crisis. The Complexity Science Hub, another research institution in Austria, has calculated or has recently published the first study in Austria what a cutoff of Russian gas supplies would mean for Austrian economy. The authors worked with two scenarios. One scenario was there is a cutoff from Russia and then there is no cooperation at all in Europe. Every country works on their own and it's a bit Wild West. The other scenario was there is strong European cooperation in a situation like that. And so in the cooperation scenario, the effect of GDP was modeled at around minus 1.9 percentage points of GDP. In an uncoordinated scenario, so no coordination in Europe, an economic impact was around 10% of GDP for Austria. Now you might question some of the assumptions of this study, you might go into much more detail or question some of also the positive effects on each of the two scenarios, but one message is clear: European cooperation pays off. There is a value in coordination. In this study, it's a value of 7% of GDP. And this is the core message. And we have similar debates in other European countries. If you look at the German debate, what could be economic effects if Vladimir Putin cuts off gas supply to Europe? There's a heated debate on that. But also the bottom line of these studies is always how does Europe cope with the effects together? Will we cooperate or will we compete? I strongly believe that the idea and the reality of Europe, the idea of cooperation, the idea of solidarity is stronger than the idea of the reality of aggression and war. I also believe that this Russian war is a turning point for our continent, a turning point in European history, but a turning point that will in the end make Europe stronger. Not least as the founding narrative of this union, a union of peace, has suddenly become re-instilled with meaning and with weight. And I'm saying this knowing that this cooperation is challenged every day. And we see it. We had a huge debate on the 6th sanction package just today, still a debate on the package. This is challenged every day. We do have different national interests in the EU. We are also aware that solidarity will be a challenge in the event that Russia stops gas supply to Europe. We do see that in the first days of COVID, we still remember how suddenly borders went back up and masks or you name it got stopped at borders in Europe. But if we look at how we managed the COVID situation and how we managed with the European recovery plan to have a completely new instrument of solidarity, of a common purpose, of a common direction as a way out of this crisis, then we see that Europe can find solutions also to difficult questions. Europe can show solidarity, and Europe can find common ways out of this crisis that make us get out stronger. And so this is the task also now. It's a challenging task. I can tell you the Energy Ministers' Councils are among the not only the most watched councils at the moment at European level, but also the most dense councils at European level at the moment. But if we look at what's happening at the European level, if we look at the proposals that the Commission is making, then we see that we're going a pathway that gives an answer to these challenges. We know we have a lot of work to do with the Fit for 55 package that needs to be finalized, but we also know that with the need to become independent of Russian imports, the case for more renewables, the case for more efficiency, the case for diversification has become stronger than ever. And the Repower EU plan in this sense also gets a double meaning, a meaning of energy transition and the meaning of really repowering a common European purpose in this energy transition. In this spirit of repowering and this spirit of belief in the European strength also in challenging time, I wish you, I will have to leave you now for the debate. I would really like to continue to debate in the panel afterwards, but unfortunately, given these realities and these challenges, I will have to leave you. But I want to wish you in this spirit a fruitful exchange today. I would also really like to, and we already discussed, extend the hope and the wish that we will cooperate also between the Ministry and the Institute in working and in managing this transition, not just in Austria, but in the region and in the continent, because in times like these, the voices of reason, the voices of science, the voices of clear arguments, the strength of free democracies are needed more than ever. And this is also your role. And so I'm also very, very grateful for every single researcher at the WIIW that contributes to this important role. And so I want to really thank you for your input, wish you a fruitful exchange, and at least 50 more years. More, if I may. Thank you.